This video demonstrates the user interface of the EMG and breathing application, showing you how to use the controls to configure the feedback to your preference. Audio feedback, including the use of the threshold, is covered elsewhere. The application has two windows. This is the main window, and this is the support window, which is only used to check on breathing calibration. We'll cover the interface in three parts. Firstly, we'll look at the short-term display, then the long-term displays, and lastly the support window and breathing calibration. This is the short-term display. The magenta trace is the EMG or muscle tension signal, and the light green trace is the breath. There are three controls here. The first combo box allows you to set the level of averaging of the EMG signal. This controls how smooth the trace looks. I like to set it to 2 seconds. You can see that when I set it to something much less, the signal looks a lot more variable. The advantage is that it's more responsive, but the disadvantage is that you see a certain amount of noise or seemingly random variation. The EMG range control sets the vertical scale for the EMG trace. The bottom of the chart is always 0, and this control sets the upper limit. If you're using the wrist placement, when you're fully relaxed it's possible to get the reading down to maybe 1 microvolt. But you'll see that the EMG is highly variable. Even small movements can make a big difference. With the forehead placement, the numbers are generally smaller, so you'll probably work with a lower range. When the head is fully relaxed, it's possible to get the reading down to 0.5 or maybe less. If the trace disappears off the top of the chart, you can see the actual reading in one of the numeric displays to the right of the chart. The fourth control sets the length of time it takes for the traces to traverse the whole chart from right to left, or in other words the horizontal range. You can see that if I set it to something lower, the traces go faster. These are the long-term displays. There are two charts. The left one shows EMG in magenta and chest score in green. The right-hand chart shows breathing rate in blue, the inhalation to exhalation ratio in red, and SDBR in orange. These parameters were introduced in another video, but to recap, chest score is a measure of the degree of chest breathing as opposed to abdominal breathing, and is only meaningful if you're using the wrist placement. SDBR is simply a measure of how variable the breath is. The scale of each parameter is independently controllable. You can click on the coloured squares at the top to select which scale is displayed in the chart's vertical axis. For example, if I click the blue square, then these numbers are in breaths per minute. There are 5 controls above the chart here. The first one sets the vertical scale of the magenta EMG trace. It works just like the range control for the short-term chart. The bottom of the chart is always 0. The second one sets the scale for the green chest score trace. The next control sets the scale for blue breathing rate. The next one sets the scale for the orange SDBR trace. And the last one sets the length of time it takes for the trace to traverse the whole chart from right to left, or in other words the horizontal range. It applies to both charts. The red inhalation to exhalation trace has a fixed scale, ranging from 0 at the bottom to 2 at the top. The support window shows you the raw breath temperature signal from which breathing parameters are derived. The system needs to calibrate to your breath. This happens automatically during the first 20 seconds after you press play. During this time, the breath trace doesn't display properly in the short-term chart. You need to breathe evenly and naturally through the nose, not too slowly. If, after this time, the breath trace still doesn't look right, or you get spurious numbers for your breathing rate, then it probably means the system miscalibrated. To correct this, you can either press stop and then start again, or there's a button in the support window here that you press after a short period of even and natural breathing. The key to reliable breath measurement is detection of the breath's turning points, or the beginnings of the inhalation and exhalation. This chart shows you what well-calibrated breathing looks like. These two dotted yellow lines should be positioned something like this. Neither is too close to the center of the graph or to the outer points. Once the breath is calibrated, it's generally very stable and reliable, and you don't need to make further reference to the support window. See the application's user guide for further information.